Welcome everybody to episode 35 of Future Strong. It's wonderful to be with you, particularly after 2 weeks ago when I was stuck on a plane and couldn't make it. But welcome everybody to a great episode. I'm Nikki Garchair and joined as always by the wonderful Lindsay Pollock and today by Sean Treccia from KPMG. So for anyone who doesn't know Capfinity, and hopefully regular listeners do now and can probably do my introduction for me, but we are a strengths-based organization offering talent technology across talent acquisition and management, and we specialize very much in the hiring of Gen Z. So I will let Lindsay introduce herself and then we will get into all the questions we've got for Sean today. But Lindsay, I'm glad you didn't catch COVID off me when we were sat so closely 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. And thank you for running it solo 2 weeks ago.
Welcome back, Nikki. We missed you so much, so I'm very happy to see you. Hi, everybody. Welcome, and please introduce yourselves in the chat. We love to say hi to you and know where you're calling in from, and I know that you'll have lots and lots of questions and comments for Sean, so please put those in the chat. I am Lindsay Pollock. I am a keynote speaker and author of 4 career and workplace advice books. My latest is called Recalculating: Navigate Your Career Through the Changing World of Work. And I am a very proud ambassador for Capfinity. And Nikki, we are inching toward the NACE conference, National Association of Colleges and Employers. And Nikki and I have a session at NACE. Sean is also going to talk about his session, but we're getting very excited for anyone who's going to be there. So let us know as well in the chat if you'll be at that conference. Without further ado, this is episode 35. We have moved out of the 18 to 34 demographic of YouTube, or what are we? LinkedIn Live shows. And today is Earth Day, so we want to celebrate our environment. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but I would love to introduce our friend and such a leader in our field, Sean Treccia. Sean, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Lindsay and Nikki, and great to be on here today. I guess I should have wore green for today, but that's not a KPMG color, so it's not approved with our logo. My name's Sean Treccia. I'm a director on the talent acquisition team for KPMG. I am based in Chicago, and I oversee 3 core groups at KPMG: our diversity, equity, and inclusion team, as well as our marketing and branding team and our events and relations team across all of talent acquisition. So that includes campus hiring, experienced hire, and our senior talent or executive hiring.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sean. Would you just tell everyone listening a little bit about what it's like doing your role at the moment? Obviously, interesting couple of years to be hiring talent in this field, but just give us a flavor of what's going on in your world. What are the application numbers like? What's kind of hot topics for you?
Sure. It's a crazy time, busier than I've ever seen it. I've been with KPMG, actually it'll be 18 or 19 years this summer. I think 19 years this summer. And we've seen ups and downs, but when I look at the volume of hiring right now at the campus level, this is US only, at least these numbers, we are hiring about 3,500 to 4,000 interns a year and about 4,000 to 4,500 full-time professionals a year. And that number is expected to grow by at least 25% next year in 2023. At the experienced hire level, we're hiring 6,000 to 7,000 a year, and that's expected to grow also. And even at our senior talent level, where we're bringing in direct entry partners, we used to be in the 100, 120, we're well over 200, and that's expected to grow. So a huge increase in the number of people we need to hire. The number of applicants, I wouldn't say has increased dramatically. I think there's been a shift away from some of the consulting fields into other fields that people feel may have better work-life balance or different kind of career opportunities. So while we have seen huge increases in hiring numbers, we have not seen a massive increase in applicants. We're around 20 to 30,000 applicants a year for some of our campus positions. Experienced hire, probably a little more than that. But that's become the challenge of filling some of the roles, is the number of roles have increased, but the number of applicants, and especially at the campus level, the number of people choosing to major in accounting, finance, and STEM is down significantly over what it was years ago. So the type of people we need to hire, at least at the campus level, are not majoring in those majors that we need.
That's so interesting. That's actually really surprising to me. Sean, I want to bring this back because you've kind of brought it up. We're
Mhm.
in this great realignment, great
Mhm.
resignation, whatever we want to call it. And you're talking about application numbers maybe not going up, but a lot of hiring going up. What other trends are kind of on your mind as we think about this? Because one of the things I
Yeah,
think we don't talk about enough, people are leaving jobs, but they're going somewhere, right?
correct.
So what are you
Right.
seeing in the market that would be interesting to our viewers who are on campuses, but also working for companies in a variety of industries?
I think the biggest thing we are seeing is an uncertainty over locations of jobs and what the future is going to look like. You're right. People are leaving jobs, but they're not leaving to go sit at home and watch TV. They're leaving for other jobs. We're getting a lot of people coming to us. We're also losing a lot to other companies. But the challenge is, the biggest challenge we seem to face is understanding how we should structure the business. I was in our office on Wednesday, our Chicago office on Wednesday, and they're desperate to try to get people back in the office. And our leaders, our partners, want people in the office more often. But most people don't want to come in more often. They've started to realize I can be successful at home. And so where's the happy medium with it? And in an industry like ours, where we have 3 direct competitors who do the same thing we do, have the same compensation structure, same career path, they're really very similar. If we try to do something maybe different that turns people off, all of a sudden they'll run to Deloitte, PwC, or E&Y. And same thing, if Deloitte does something that turns people off, they'll run to us and PwC and EY. So it's really one of those, how far do you push it to get what we want from people when they have easy switching costs? The cost to switch from an auditor at KPMG to an auditor at PwC is really minimal. The job's the same. There's really, you get a new boss. That's about it. The benefits, everything else is pretty much the same. So the ease of switching has made it a real challenge, and trying to understand how to manage that for our teams has become rough.
So this is something I've always wondered, because students apply probably if they want to be an audit to all the big 4, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you differentiate, and how do students who really do want to be at KPMG, how do they convince you that that's their first choice? I'm really curious how students handle that, because it is
Sure.
pretty unique. It
Yeah.
is not that many industries where you have such a clear competitive set. So I'd love to hear how do you parse that out in the interview? How do you get students? How do you figure out who really is a good fit for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. The challenge of the last couple of years has been the virtual environment has made that a challenge, because what we distinguish ourselves with and our competitors is really the culture of the firm. I worked at one of the other firms, I won't mention which one, and they were great to work at, but their culture was very different. I did not fit in with their culture. We are more of an entrepreneurial culture. In other words, giving you the freedom to kind of own your career. And there's certain things that we talk about, I guess, I don't want to say more of a family atmosphere, but working a little more in teams and a little less of a hierarchy. Doesn't mean that's better or worse than the competitors, but we just like to say, this is what we are. This is who we are. If this is what you want, it may be a good fit. And unfortunately, the only way to get that across, or the best way to get that across to people, is through in-person interaction. Over video is okay. It works, but that in-person makes a big difference. So as we started to get back to campus this spring, it has really helped us see increase in acceptance rates and applications, because people are starting to meet us. What we see from surveys is students who meet KPMG early have a very high conversion rate to starting with us, but those who never met us and just apply don't convert very well at all, because we don't have a household like or anything like that. And we're not the largest, we're the smallest. So sell that. So I think that's one of the big things, that selling that culture, which you can't really put on a website or in a tweet. It needs to be done in person.
So interesting. We love action in chat, but pass it over.
Not want to be required to go in more than 2 days a week. They'll accept 3, but not more than 2. That's for people manager level and below, which in our industry, you're talking 30 years old-ish and below. People above that tend to want to go in a little more. So that's the challenge, is because the people above that are the bosses. And so they want their people in more, but the younger people whose jobs are much more transferable, it's much easier to switch your career after 1 year than it is after 10 years. Getting to the right level of how often people want to come in, and then what's right for the clients. We're also seeing on the client side too, because our clients may not want us in their office as much, or they may not be willing to pay for it. Our clients pay for us to go to their locations, but a client may say, we're not paying for you to come in 5 days a week anymore because you don't need to be here 5 days. So negotiating that with the client. If we think we should be there 4 days, but the client's only going to pay for 2, how do you deal with that? So there's no perfect answer, but yes, we survey all the time and are continually trying to manage that.
It's such an amazing time to be in this world. Just one thing after another that we're navigating kind of new frontiers on. Adrian, I did want to just pick up on how, and I make an assumption that you think, like Lindsay and I do, that hiring of graduates and interns at this time is evolving. Clearly, the pandemic created some evolution. There's also some movement back. I've seen across the US and the UK this week a lot of campus activity and photographs of very busy career fair halls once again, which I'm sure many universities are delighted to see. But from your perspective, what are some of the innovations that are maybe kind of surprising you, that perhaps you didn't think would happen? I'd love to hear your perspective on how you see things panning out in this space from a recruitment perspective.
Sure. I'll look at the innovations from a couple of different ways. There's obviously technology innovation that I think the pandemic forced us to do video interviews because we couldn't be on campus. One benefit that has created is for companies like ours that hire into multiple offices, it has helped us connect people with someone from that office. In the past, if you went to University of Florida in Gainesville and you wanted to interview for our Seattle office, we weren't going to send someone from Seattle all the way to Gainesville to interview the one student who may want to go to Seattle. So you'd interview with somebody local from one of our Florida offices. Now you can interview with people directly on video from Seattle. So I think that's been an innovation that has really helped and that we are sticking with. There's still going to be a lot of in-person interaction, but now when you want to meet someone who's not local, we don't have to force you into the local person, nor do we have to just say you have to do a phone call. You have the video. So I think that has really helped. The other innovation, and this gets to the diversity side, one of my focuses is when we look at diversity in our industry, for the most part, what that means is Black and Latinx candidates across the board and women in technology. Those are where we tend to struggle attracting people. And so there just aren't enough people from those backgrounds in the majors we need. So rather than just keep fighting over the same pool, which we are doing, we're trying to increase the pool. So there's a specific program, it's what I'm going to be presenting at NACE, that we're partnering with Forage, which is an online training platform, to create virtual training and learning sessions about our audit and tax careers. And we're promoting it through community colleges. And the idea there is to say we don't recruit from community colleges right now because you have to have a 4-year degree to start with us. But there are so many students at community colleges, many of whom are from underrepresented backgrounds, many of whom may want to go into a 4-year school for their degree, but aren't thinking of audit and tax. Because I'll be honest, no 18-year-old says, I want to be an auditor. I want to be a tax consultant. Like, I'm not. Like, that doesn't come across. It's not a fun and sexy career. So, but how can we get people who have some interest in business and accounting and finance and those things to start to consider these careers? So we're working with professors and presenting at a conference for community colleges in a couple of weeks, and then at NACE to talk about how we can get more people interested. So that's the innovation side, is saying, let's not just worry about hiring. Let's build up the pool of people. And we know that if we do that, that will help Ernst & Young, that will help Deloitte, that will help PricewaterhouseCoopers, that will help Accenture, Google, Coke, it'll help everybody. But we all need to do things like that because we can't keep just fighting over the same small pool of people.
I love that. I also want to acknowledge, I know some people are having some tech issues. It looks like if you just refresh the page, that should solve the issue, but we are streaming this and recording this, so we'll also send the video to anyone who might have missed a minute or two. Sean, I want to go a little deeper on DEI that I know is so important to you. You're a white man, right? You've been doing this a long time. I would love to hear what you've personally learned and kind of how you've evolved and what being in that role of overseeing that function with recruiting. I'd just be curious to hear a little bit more about your experience with DEI.
Sure. Yeah, it has been a new experience for me in that I've been involved in programs in the past, but I don't meet any of the requirements you call for diversity. I'm straight, white, male, not a veteran. I don't have a disability or need any of this. So I don't meet any of the check boxes there. And one of the things that I realized early on in talking to one of our senior partners, who's a Black audit partner, is he really emphasized that when we're doing programs for students, at least around diversity, his view is that students don't want to be treated, they don't want to feel like they're getting special treatment because they're Black or a woman in technology or they're a veteran. They want to be given the same opportunities as everyone else. So we have programs designed, say, for freshmen and sophomores, so pre-internship, that are designed for underrepresented talent. And the idea there isn't to say you need extra training because you're underrepresented. It's to say we want to get you exposure to KPMG early because we're trying to build up our relationships with you. So it's that balance of how do you get in touch with people and build connections with them without pandering and be like, oh yeah, you're a woman in technology, so clearly you don't know this. We need to help you with that. That's not true at all. We just know that in general, there aren't as many women in technology, so we have to expose more of them to the opportunities. So that's something I've really realized is how we're adjusting the tone and the focus of our programs to really be about learning and development and not about, oh, you're special and that's why you're getting this, because his point was really good that nobody wants to be treated as special. They just want to be given the same opportunities as everyone else.
Just on that, Sean, and we work with some of the Big Four here in the UK. One of the approaches has been to focus on, we use the word school leaver programs and also apprenticeships.
Yep.
And apprenticeships, and I talk about this quite a bit on Future Strong, but in the UK, apprenticeships have really supported from a diversity talent pipeline perspective.
Yep.
But I'm always curious, in the US, it seems it's emerging. I see some clients doing technology apprenticeships, but have you got any thoughts of whether you think that apprenticeships will pick up more in the US and why it may be the case that the pickup is slower?
Yeah, I can't speak exactly to how the UK does it, but I'm somewhat familiar. We're talking with my colleagues in our London office. And one of the challenges that we face in the US tends to be just the school structure. Our school structure does not, except for engineering majors. Engineering, because I was a civil engineering major in undergrad, that's geared towards a lot of apprenticeships. But in many of the other, especially business majors, you're not allowed to take time off school for apprenticeships. You can do a summer internship somewhere, but otherwise during the school year, you have to be in school. Whereas I know in some other locations, in some of the Canadian locations, they do work and study in some. That's just not structured. So even if we wanted to do it, the schools don't allow it. But to your point of, do I see it getting there? Yes, because something we are starting to do is look at things such as micro internships or internships, or you could call them apprenticeships during the school year, where you have because the virtual environment has showed us that someone can go to the University of Illinois, where I went to school, which is 2.5 hours from Chicago, and still work on Chicago projects because they can do things virtually. Now, if you're taking 15 hours of classes, plus you play a sport and you've got homework, but you have another 8 hours a week where you'd like to work, you don't have to just go to Starbucks and work as a barista. Maybe you could work that 8 hours a week at KPMG. So trying to do things during the school year to give people experience, whereas in the past we would have said, you could never do that because you're down in Champaign and you must be in Chicago. So now looking at those kind of apprenticeship model, the idea of working and going to school at the same time. Starting to look at some of that. I wouldn't say it's where we want it to be yet, but just early stages.
Wanted to share a comment from Helen in the chat. She agrees, Sean, with your comments about DEI. Those from minority groups wish to be treated like everyone else. They don't want to be treated as special. This is the true meaning of being inclusive. So thank you, Helen, for that comment. And please keep the comments and questions coming. We get a lot of questions, Sean, particularly from those in career services, on candidate prep and what students can do to really appeal to a company like KPMG. Can you talk a little bit about your advice to a student who maybe does feel like being an auditor would be super cool and exactly what they want to do? What could they be doing to really appeal to you and be a great candidate? And I'm really curious, has that changed over time? Because I remember being well-rounded and being a leader was super important. And I feel like maybe there's some different advice today.
Yeah, I would say some of those things are still true. Being well-rounded, being a good leader, that hasn't gone away. But I think one thing to show, or say a few things to show your interest, is understand a little about what the roles are. There's no reason now not to know what goes into a basic job. Every company has videos on their websites. We can share. I sent it to the group here earlier in our start, the link to our website that has some preparation materials, but most companies will have day in the life videos or different things like that. So I'd encourage students to look at those, because a student who comes up to us and says, well, I want to be an audit, so what does audit do? Like, I don't have time for that student. Like, there's a million websites, social media things you can follow to find that out. So I'd say do the research on what they do, but also understand why you want the role. I think in the past, we used to see a lot of people, especially in audit careers, go into audit because they said, well, I'm an accounting major and I don't like tax. Okay, so there are other careers in consulting and advisory beyond just audit. But the assumption was, well, my old professor who's been around back when there was the big 10 firms or big 8 firms worked at Arthur Andersen and said, I have to go into audit. Well, no, you don't. And so trying to help people understand, why is it you want to do that job? What are you hoping to get out of that job? And understand the skills that are now different. So much is done automated now with computers. We're not writing out with pencil and paper anymore like 50 years ago. So what we need are people who are inquisitive, people who can really talk to the client, who can look at the numbers. You don't have to be a stats major, but you have to understand statistics. When someone's presenting you a concern about a certain part of the audit, and they're saying, oh, this inventory isn't looking right, and based on over the last few years, it's showing a certain standard deviation. You have to have some idea what they're talking about. You don't have to know how to calculate it. There's people who will calculate that stuff. But I think people thought before, well, it's just good math skills. And I'm a little biased being an engineering major. The math skills in accounting are much easier than engineering. It's not your math skills that make a big difference. It's your ability to analyze something, look at it critically, and question it. And I think that is a challenge with the current generation, speaking as someone who has a teenage son, because they live off short clips of things, tweets, TikToks, things that headlines, you see something like, oh, that must be what it is because I saw that, without going in depth. The amount of people who read headlines in articles but don't read the article is a big problem, because that's a problem with our clients. If all you're doing is hearing what the client said, or what the top line summary is, but not digging deep into it, you're going to miss some significant issues that could cause a problem. And I think that's a real hard thing for a generation that wants things instantly and wants to know right away.
Just building on that, Sean, this links quite a lot to a agenda that's growing kind of in the UK and also in the US around future skills. The focus may be on skills alongside major, and arguably I would say outstripping major, but obviously for some of your roles, the major is critical. Are there skills that you think in the next, I won't ever say 5 years anymore, because God only knows what will be happening then, but the next few years, are there particular skills that you think are going to become really critical for some of the professions you're recruiting for?
I think the statistics side that I mentioned earlier is important. I think technology skills, being very comfortable, again, not to the level of a computer programmer, but very comfortable using different technologies, because when we work with clients, we have technology we use, but we often have to use the client's technology to get the information we need. So someone has to be very comfortable at the drop of a hat going into a new client and adapting to new technology. So a general comfort with all different types of technologies, the statistics. And then I'd say writing is still really important, because I look at back, like in high school, it was about how much you could write. Take that 10-page paper, make it 20-page by spacing it out or different margins. We don't want that now. We want that 10-page paper into one paragraph. And that's something people forget a lot. And maybe it's social media. They're used to quick things in tweets or posts. But how can you take a lot of information, synthesize it in a short way that executive who you only have 5 minutes with can understand what you're saying, because you're only going to get 5 minutes on that person's calendar. And so can you write something that's very precise and gets what they need, and or your ability to communicate effectively, not to add too much information, but to add the key points. So anything people can do, leading organizations at school where they have to present to others, getting outside of their comfort zone, working across cultures. Don't just pick your friends for every group. Pick people from different backgrounds, international students, whatever it may be, to force you outside of your comfort zone, because that's where work is going to be.
I love this. And sorry, Lindsay, I just want to dive in on one more. You started to mention some of those, I'm going to say softer skills, but interpersonal. Will you just share a bit more on that side of some of those skills that you see coming through as well?
Sure. I go with the critical thinking side, because I mentioned earlier how the technology does a lot for us. So when I joined 18 years ago, a first year tax professional spent most of their time doing tax returns. Now a first year tax professional barely touches a tax return. They have to take the information from the tax return, review it, look up the laws to make sure everything's accurate, analyze it, and then present back to the director of tax at a client, or a small organization could be the CFO. So they're doing that in their first and second year, whereas in the past they weren't doing that to their fifth or sixth year. So it comes much earlier. The learning curve or the type of work you do has just dropped down a lot, because technology can do those easy and the less value added things. Nobody liked doing the tax return anyway. Now you don't need to, the computer will populate it for you. So I think it's that it's looking at things critically and not rushing through. This happens often. People read something like, oh, I read it, I'm good. One of the things I always tell people is read it, step away for an hour, and then read it again. Because if you're doing it right back to back, your mind just thinks of the things that should be there, whereas you need to step away to kind of forget it a little and come back. So trying to get our people to do that too, and shift their work into not doing the same thing over and over.
That is so fascinating, because what we've been saying about future of work for decades is the more automation we have, the less automated the humans need to be, right? The more tech we have, the more human we need to be, because we need that combination. Another piece of future work, Sean, and it is Earth Day around the world, is sustainability. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you're doing in your role towards sustainability, any sustainability jobs that you have and maybe are growing at KPMG. Can you just talk a little bit about environmental issues?
Sure, that's a huge growing area for us. I would say at the entry level, we're hiring low numbers in the 5 and 10s right now, but that will double, triple, go tenfold in the next several years. When you look at a business like ours, we're clearly not designing solar panels or something like that. But what we do is work with organizations that do those various environmental things to help understand, are there things working? So you're designing solar panels. Is it providing what it says it's going to? What's the electrical output? So we analyze those different things for the clients, with their public companies, so investors know what to invest in, with government agencies, so the government can come to us and say, all right, this company is saying they're going to produce X kilowatts of energy over this time. They're not going to believe the company. We come in to audit that to make sure it's true. So that's a lot of the environmental work we're doing. Again, back to we're not designing the tech, but we're looking at the tech. We're looking at the different governance models that are set up, the ESG, environmental, social, and governance, and looking at how organizations are set up. What are the checks and balances in there? What's the reporting? And how is that going to continue as we go on? So there are a lot of opportunities. Right now, it tends to be at the higher level positions, but I anticipate from what our leaders have said, going into the hundreds of people we need to hire at the campus level over the next few years.
Sean, thank you so much for these insights. I feel like we've been on a journey from the recruitment through to the future of work all in the last 30 minutes. So it's been incredible to have your insights and your wisdom. Lindsay, I missed asking you this 2 weeks ago. I would love to hear the 3 takeaways that you've got from the session today to summarize for us that will go out on social media. And thank you everyone for listening into the session. But Lindsay, what have you captured?
As usual, our guest was so good. I couldn't narrow it to 3. So I have 4 takeaways from Sean Treccia of KPMG. Number 1 is on the topic of tech innovation. To realize the benefit of video interviews, we often talk about the challenges, but it allows students in diverse locations to meet the actual people that they might work with in a particular office. So really take advantage of the way that video interviewing can connect students to real people at your company, which really does differentiate you from other competitors. Number 2, Sean, you talked about your relationship with Forage and providing virtual training and opportunities to community college students, not just for KPMG's benefit, but to really benefit all of us by expanding the the number of students that we have who can apply for our positions. So I thought that was a really great takeaway. Number 3, on diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, not to position students who are from underrepresented groups as needing special help or more help, but the true definition of inclusion, as one of our audience members said, is about making everybody feel that they have the same opportunities. So not separate, but included. And number 4, you gave some really good advice to students who want to come into a company like KPMG or really any role where automation is becoming more important. You emphasize the importance of what we often call soft skills, critical thinking, comfort with technology. Loved your advice on writing and really being able to synthesize large amounts of information into shorter areas, and students showing that they are diversifying their own networks as students, because that will be so important to their work at companies. So Sean, we want to thank you for being our guest today. We would love to ask you to tell people where they can find you if they want to be in touch, and if you want to give a little commercial for your session at NACE.
Sure, thanks. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Sean Treccia. I'm there. Feel free to connect with me at any point. The session at NACE will be for the Career Catalyst program, the one I saw they just put the link in here. This is our program for community college students, technically open to anyone, but the focus is community college students to help increase interest in the audit and tax career. So I'll be presenting Thursday afternoon at NACE in Portland this year.
Wonderful. Sean, we look forward to seeing you face to face. And thank you again for all of the expert wisdom you've shared. We will be joined 2 weeks' time by someone from a brand I suspect we've all used. That's Dawn Carter from Uber. And she will be sharing with us her insights into what it's like to recruit technology talent at these times. So really looking forward to speaking to Dawn 2 weeks from now. Sean, thank you so much. Everyone, apologies for any technical problems. Hopefully you've managed to join YouTube and capture anything that you didn't manage to hear in the session, but hope everyone has a great Earth Day and good weekends. Thank you.